And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Shannon, and thank you for joining me today from Lancaster, South Carolina. My co-host David Heller is off today. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American, and we certainly strive for that here on the Citizen Report. On today's show, I want to talk to you a little bit about the concept of the color of law. Now, those of you who aren't into the law and understanding the law on a, beyond just a very basic level, you might not know what color of law even means, but it's very important that you do understand what color of law means, because it may end up playing a big role, and I would argue it already is playing a big role with these stay-at-home orders. Because as you'll see, basically the color of law, that phrase, is basically categorically what these stay-at-home orders are. And before I read to you what the definition of that is, basically the best way I can put it in basic language, the most elementary language, is that the color of law is basically when something has the appearance it's basically when something has the appearance of law but doesn't actually derive from law. It's de facto law but not de jure law. And de facto means something is in practice happening but doesn't have the legal grounds or legal recognition of it. De jure, on the other hand, is when something is legally sanctioned, whether even if it's not actually happening, like a legal entity. A legal entity such as a corporation, it can exist, but there may not be any business taking place, but it can technically be in existence. I hope I didn't confuse you by saying that, but I figured that use a different example such as that to help try to explain what de jure and de facto mean. Now let me switch gears back to color of law, because I'm going to read to you in just a second here what basically the U.S. Department of Justice has to say about this. And as you're going to come to understand, hopefully, these stay-at-home orders are essentially color of law. And that, at least on the ones that actually require you to stay at home under penalties of being arrested or cited, and basically where you're being deprived of rights. And this is from justice.gov, and I'm going to read this to you. This is regarding color of law, and I quote, Section 242 of Title 18 makes it a crime for a person acting under color of any law to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. For the purpose of Section 242, acts under color of law, and it's got the color of law phrase in quotations there, include acts not only done by federal, state, or local officials within their lawful authority, but also acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority. If the acts are done while the official is purporting to or pretending to act in the performance of his/her official duties. Persons acting under color of law within the meaning of this statute include police officers, prison guards, and other law enforcement officials, as well as judges, care providers in public health facilities, and others who are acting as public officials. It is not necessary that the crime be motivated by animus towards the race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin of the victim. The offense, now this is one of the key points I want you to listen especially carefully to. The offense is punishable by a range of imprisonment up to a life term or the death penalty, depending upon the circumstances of the crime and the resulting injury, if any. Now, that was basically more or less the U.S. Department of Justice's sort of their interpretation of the U.S. Code, basically, on their website. Now, down below that, it actually contains the quote from the U.S. Code. That's to say, it's a federal law, basically. And I'm just going to read that to you as well. Title 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Whoever under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And if bodily injury results from the acts committed in violation of this section, or if such acts include the use, attempted use, or threatened use of a dangerous weapon, explosives, or fire, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both. And if death results from the acts committed in violation of this section, or if such acts including kidnapping or an attempt to kidnap, aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to commit aggravated sexual abuse, or an attempt to kill, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for any term of years or for life or both, or may be sentenced to death. Now that's the end of this screenshot that I'm basically reading from justice.gov. I'm not sure if I'm going to put the screenshot on the video, but at least you've heard me say it, if nothing else. Again, this is basically the purpose of this broadcast today. I want you to understand that basically these stay-at-home orders, if you understand anything at all from what I just read, stay-at-home orders, what do? Think about it for a second. They deprive you of rights. And what do I mean by that? Well, like the First Amendment, you have the right to free speech. You have the right to peacefully assemble. And no, peacefully assemble doesn't mean that peacefully has to mean that you're meeting, in some fashion to prevent virus. The Founding Fathers didn't quantify anything like that. Peacefully assemble just simply means you're not, going looting in the streets or something like that. It means that you can peacefully assemble, barring any occurrence like that. And you have the right to, of course, deriving from that, you have a right to go to church. You have a right to not just have your faith, but to practice it, live it out in your daily life. And the government is not supposed to usurp that. And this is something else I want to get at too. For decades, especially the last few decades, what am I trying to get at? The separation of church and state. My mind went blank for a second. The separation of church and state, however, that has been perverted. The meaning of that. It does not mean that basically where God has to be kept out of government, or where church can't have any involvement. It's just to say that we're not England, where we have like the Church of England, which is kind of the national thing, but at the same time they're not saying that as Christians we can't live out our faiths even in government. Like in God we trust. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we were founded as a Christian country, and that's just the way it is. We were founded on Christian ethics and principles, and that is, the common law, the English common law is heavily steeped in Christian ethics, in Christian values. And what do I mean by that? Basically, your right to have free will. And by free will, I mean that, you're allowed to basically have the liberty of being self-governed under God. And that's kind of the best way I know to put it. The government doesn't have a right to tell you can't do it. These rights, by the way, that are enumerated in the Constitution, those rights were not created by the Constitution. They were merely secured by the Constitution. That's it. The Constitution is essentially the people's contract with the federal government and the states to say, we're going to allow you to have this amount of power, but at the same time, you as a government only exist to protect our rights. You don't exist to usurp them. And like the governor of Michigan, acting like she has all authority, and the Chicago mayor saying we're going to arrest you and cite you. It's just so ridiculous. They don't have a right to do that because they're elected to represent their own constituents, their citizens. The citizens are the sovereign, they of this country. Like in other countries that, we have Queen Elizabeth as the quote unquote sovereign. Of course, I would argue, the only true sovereign without dispute is God himself. But, we'll play with their terms for a moment. Queen Elizabeth is quote unquote sovereign of the United Kingdom and, all these other Commonwealth things going on. But in this country, we don't have that. The people, you and I, are the sovereigns. As a people, we're sovereign. These people cannot just take away your rights. And this is what I'm trying to get at. The color of law is what's going on here. It is not law. It's merely color of law. And I would like to I think that the more accurate way to put forth that concept is not color of law. It's unlawful color of law. It's not lawful. It's the government saying, these people saying they have this power, but they don't. They don't. They don't have a right to usurp your First Amendment. They don't have a right to usurp your Second Amendment, your Fourth Amendment, your Fifth Amendment. Take, for instance, that shop owner in that woman in Texas. She was literally arrested because she reopened her business, her salon, and she told the judge it's not selfish, because the judge is a despicable person, if I may say that. He has no business being a judge. He must have told her that she was being selfish in some capacity. But she responded brilliantly that it's not selfish to feed my children. And amen to that. Amen. Amen. Amen to heaven and back. It's just, she's spot on. She has every right. You have a right to go earn a living in this country. You have a right to opportunity. You have a right to not be interfered with by the government. That God gave us, we're supposed to be, as I said earlier, self-governing under God. It means that we're supposed to act, we're supposed to be good citizens of this country, but that the government leaves us alone and we self-regulate. We're self-governing. And the color of law, again, just one more time, the color of law is the appearance of law, but is not lawful. It's these stay-at-home orders, you see. You may not like the fact, even if you're not on the side of liberty in this matter, where you think that people should be told to stay home. Even if you think that way, it's not your place to say that, because the rights don't get suspended. The Constitution is not suspended during an emergency or during a purported emergency, I will say, because I think they've overblown this. Yes, I think there's a virus, but I also think that it's they're hyping the narrative up to try to take away our rights. And I don't think it's working, because the more they do it, the more people are pushing back. And I'm so glad to see that. That's exactly what needs to happen. We do not need to be giving these people our rights away, because we probably won't get it back. And if we do get it back, it'll be in this more limited privilege kind of deal. But just, the color of law is what these stay-at-home orders are. They're not actual law. And the U.S. Code, as I read it, and as I read the interpretation of the U.S. Department of Justice, these governors and local officials that are not opening up fast enough, or refusing to open up, or they even had a stay-at-home order at any point during this time where it usurped our rights, they were committing color of law, which means that they could be indicted. They could be arrested for this. They could be probably on a federal level indicted by the Justice Department or some entity, whoever it might be. So I think that it'll be interesting to watch how Bill Barr approaches this, because he's already indicated that he's going to be watching what these states do. It's time to open back up, and I think he's made it clear that he's going to be watching these people, as he should. So on that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning into the Citizen Report today from Lancaster, South Carolina. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and my co-host David Heller again is off today. Be sure to come to our website at thecitizenreport.weebly.com. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram. And I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for tuning into the Citizen Report. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great day, and I will see you again next time.
The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.